Hello, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to a new Bible study. I'm glad you're joining us again. And feel free to take a look at our website. There we write down all the studies. So if you don't want to listen to our voices, feel free to go to the website and study the word over there. Let's continue in Habakkuk. Habakkuk 1 verse 8 and 9. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle swift to devour. They all come for violence, all their faces forward, and they gather captives like sand. To give you some background and context, and as we already mentioned in the last video, we will be going through a very brief history of the world of the Old Testament. We talked about the beginning of civilizations, primarily around great river valleys. The first was in Mesopotamia in the Tigris or the Euphrates River valleys. It began with the Sumerian city-states in about 3500 BC, who invented writing systems, the wagon wheel, and working with bronze. The Akkadians rose in about 2300 BC, conquering the region and becoming the first conquering empire. When Akkid collapsed around 2150, that's probably when Abram moved from Ur to Haran, and that's about 900 kilometers kilometers and 600 miles. The older civilization to arise was the Egyptians in the Nile River Valley around 3100 BC. For almost 1,000 years, Egypt's old kingdom flourished, and it was during this period that the pyramids were built. However, in about 2160, the nation collapsed into 100-year civil war. Eventually, Mentuhotep managed to reunite the country, thus starting the Egyptian Middle Kingdom in about 2050 BC. This is about the time that Abram traveled from Haran to the land that God gave him, Canaan. Because of a famine in the land, Abram continued down to Egypt during a famine in Canaan and became very wealthy, as we can read in Genesis 12 verse 9 to 20. And in the next video we will continue with Canaan. The power of the Babylonians. As we move back to the Habakkuk's prophecy, Yahweh continues with his description of the ferocity of the Babylonians. In these verses, he likens the armies of Babylon to predators in the animal kingdom. He says swifter than leopards, fiercer than wolves, prouder than horsemen, and lastly, fly like eagles which are swift to devour. As we look at the history of the rise of the Babylonian Empire, we see that God's words ring true. Founded by Nabopolassar in 626 BC, the Babylonians began to revolt from their masters, the Assyrians, and formed an army that was unmatched. They reached their apex through the leadership of his son Nebuchadnezzar. Babylon's ascendancy to a world power was so remarkable that it can easily be seen how it was guided by God's hand. As stated in Habakkuk 1 verse 6, it was unimaginable that a virtually non-existent entity could conquer Assur in 614 BC, Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, in 612 BC, Haran in 610 BC, and then 5 years later, in 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, the warrior prince, devastated Egyptian armies of Pharaoh Necho at Carchemish in 605 BC, and continued to chase them more than 150 miles to crush them completely. God used Babylon as his agent of judgment against Israel for their sins of idolatry and rebellion against him. There were several different times Babylon attacked Jerusalem due to rebellion from the Jews, and finally in 586 BC, Babylon laid siege to Jerusalem for over a year, killing many and destroying the Jewish temple, taking thousands of Jews captive, and leaving Jerusalem in ruins. You can read this in 2 Kings 24 and 25. The Babylonians conquered nations by gathering captives and taking them to other parts of the empire, and deporting best and brightest people to Babylon and re-educated them in the Babylonian language, in their culture, religion, arts, etc. Some of the well-known captives from scripture were Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Ezekiel. And the last interesting point is that it is interesting to note that again God uses Habakkuk's own words to describe his plan. In his lament, Habakkuk writes, "Cry to you, violence, and you will not save." And he writes, "Destruction and violence are before me," looking for God to relieve them from their problems. However, Yahweh tells Habakkuk that they all come from violence, affirming to the prophet that he will be punishing Judah with far worse violence than his complaint. Okay, brothers, in this study we have focused a lot on history. And for those of you who don't geek out on biblical history, the one thing we should understand that the stories in the Bible are actual people, actual places and actual events. It is history, not a bunch of made-up stories. Therefore, God, we can be assured that Yahweh was active in world history, and he is still active today. The Bible often urges us to remember, because reflecting on God's faithfulness strengthens our resolving to trust and obeying him in our present struggles. Remember and reflect on examples from the Bible and your own life when you have witnessed God's control in difficult times, thanking him that even today he is fulfilling his good purposes for our life, for your life, and acknowledge his control and ask for his help to be obedient even during the dark days. May we encourage each other, may we sharpen each other, and let's bless each other with this Bible study. Thank you for studying the Bible with us again, and I'm definitely hope to see you in the next one.